and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. So today's episode is going to be a spoiler review of Gone in the Night. I was up all last night still thinking about Gone in the Night, and I was up this morning thinking about it. I did a review, which if you guys have not watched Gone in the Night yet, I would pause this one maybe and watch it, or listen to my first review, which does not have any spoilers in it, or shouldn't have any spoilers in it. I felt like doing a review that didn't contain spoilers for Gone in the Night was a little bit tricky because the movie is so strange and so hard to kind of explain. The plot of the film it's just one that I feel like lends more to a spoiler review than it does to a non-spoiler review. So I wanted to do another one for multiple reasons. I very much want to talk about it some more because I can't really stop thinking about it. And then I was having a discussion with my friend, and I feel like he summed up how I feel about Gone in the Night so perfectly. He said that movies that are almost really great are almost worse than the ones that just suck. You know, is if you go into a movie and you expect it to be bad, you're not disappointed. You know, you go in kind of with low expectations. It lives up to those low expectations, and you can kind of carry on with your day. But if you go into a movie not really knowing what to expect, and it comes so close to really being like a very authentic and unique piece of work, but just slightly misses the mark, it's almost more irritating than if it had just sucked, right? Like, it's wormed its way into my brain so well that I feel like doing a spoiler review will help me kind of explain more some of the reasons why it just missed the mark a little bit for me. So the entire preface of the movie, or how it starts out at least, is Winona Ryder, her and her boyfriend Max. When you meet them at the beginning of the film, the first kind of experience that you have with them is them during this drive on the way to this cabin that they are going to rent for the weekend. There is no really kind of backstory to them at that point. So I assumed that they were married. You know, Winona Ryder is a little bit older. It's pretty clear that Max is younger than her, but the way that they communicate with each other and the way that they kind of interact sort of leads the audience to believe that they're married. They sort of struck me in that beginning sequence as potentially a couple, like a married couple whose relationship isn't necessarily the greatest and who potentially has gone to therapy, because there are some things that Winona Ryder says quite a lot throughout the film that sort of seem to lend to maybe a therapist is like, come out of your comfort zone, you know, have some adventure, because she does end up kind of telling Max quite a few times, you know, like, I'll let you know when I've had enough adventure, which sort of leads to that sort of marriage on the rocks kind of thing. So they're driving along, and there is one sort of scene that I sort of feel is a bit like Game of Thrones, like Arya learning the faceless stuff. It's like one of those little tidbits that you feel like is going to be a little bit more important than it actually ever turns out to be. And so they're driving, he rolls down his window, sticks his head out the window, and loses his hat, and makes her pull the car over, right, to retrieve this hat. He goes on and on about how it's a limited edition and there are only 1,000 and he needs to go get it. This hat is like extremely important to him, which leads you to believe that that will at some point matter. But it does not. It does not. Like, there is never a point where, and I think maybe there should have been a point when that was a bigger deal, but it just never comes to fruition. Anyways, she pulls over, he gets his hat, they carry on to this cabin. The second they get there, there is a man, a younger, you know, the other couple in the film, I would say, is a younger couple. I would guesstimate somewhere in their mid to late 20s. Maybe early 20s. You never learn anyone's ages throughout the entire movie. It's kind of hinted at a few times, but it's never actually explained. So this boy, this man, this 20-something-year-old, his character is, the only word that I can lend to describe him is angsty. Like, he never quite gets out of that sort of stereotype. He just always seems angsty. He's got, stringy, dirty hair. He doesn't say much throughout the film, but he always sort of just looks nervous, or like seems like he's nervous. And he is the first to see them kind of pull up and, is immediately sort of telling them, like, get lost, we don't want you here, yada, yada. And it is his counterpart, his girlfriend, that's like, no, they can stay the night, because they believe there's been some sort of mix-up, that they've both rented the cabin at the same time. And here is where the movie sort of starts to go downhill. This younger couple, right out of the gate, the way that they behave and the way that they interact with Max and Winona, it's so shady. It's like immediately suspect, which in the real world, I feel like any sort of more mature couple, and Winona Ryder is meant to be, like this independent older woman who's dating a younger man, like, immediately I feel like she would sniff that out and just be like, something is weird. I don't want to stay here. But she ends up getting convinced to like stay the night in this cabin, which right away I'm like, who does this? Like, who ends up in a cabin in the middle of the woods with no cell phone signal, which they drive that point home a few times for also no reason, and is just like, there's this shady couple and yeah, we'll go ahead and spend the night. It just, it doesn't lend to the believability of it, because I don't think that any real person would do that. Like myself, if I pulled up and saw this like strange couple because they're both wearing like raincoats for no reason, like, I don't know, just their interaction seems strange just right out of the gate. I would immediately get back in my car and drive back home. It's like a 2-hour drive, which yes is quite a distance. But if it's murder or 2-hour drive, like, I'm going to pick the 2-hour drive. Like that's just how that's going to go, But they decide to stay. They end up playing some board games. It's awkward. And then at the end of the night, Winona's like, okay, it's 10:30. Like, I want to go to bed. The rest of them want to stay up. She goes to bed. At no point is she concerned, that maybe her boyfriend doesn't come back to bed with her. Like, at no point is she concerned that she has gone to bed alone and wakes up alone. Like, she seems not at all concerned with that in any shape or form. And at that point that her and her boyfriend have been dating for approximately a year. A year into a relationship, I feel like you kind of have a bit of a routine down. You would at least have some mild expectation that your partner would join you in bed, and he never did. And she seems not at all fazed by that, right? So she wakes up, immediately notices that the house is empty. She's the only one there. And she ends up wandering out into the woods and finding the angsty boy who is pretending to cry. And I feel like it is very obvious that he's pretending to cry or pretending to be upset. But she thinks he really is upset, right? He tells her that her boyfriend and his girlfriend have hooked up, that he has discovered them like hooking up together, and they've left together. They've taken the car, they've taken their stuff, and they've left. But here's the part that stands out to me as should have been a bigger deal. Max, Winona's boyfriend, has left his hat. This hat that he made her pull the car over so he could go retrieve, he's left it in this cabin. So she takes it with her when she leaves. And now here's another thing. That, for me, as his girlfriend, would immediately stand out as a red flag of like, something is suspicious. Something is weird. My boyfriend would not ever leave this hat. Like, it is his favorite hat, his lucky hat. Something is wrong if he's left it. And leave it, the way that men are about some of their stuff, like, even if you meet like the girl of your dreams, I feel like you're not going to leave behind like your lucky hat. You're going to take your lucky hat and the girl of your dreams. You're going to want both things. And to lend to like the weirdness of that whole situation, Winona Ryder's character doesn't really seem to give a crap that her boyfriend has like fled in the night with some younger woman. Like a normal woman, I feel like, regardless of age, like sure, a younger girl might get to a place where she has cell phone signal and then just, repeatedly and obsessively call him on the phone. But an older woman, I feel like, would still probably call him and just be like, what's up, dick? Like, what the fuck? Like, why would you just ditch me? She doesn't. She just packs up all her stuff, gets in the car, drives back home, goes to work, like everything's normal. There is a scene that she has with like one of her best friends, or what I assume is her best friend, where she's just like, no, it's totally fine. What I want is peace and quiet. Like, she hasn't called him. She hasn't checked on him. She doesn't know if he made it back from the cabin okay. Like, she's dated him a year. He leaves with some other woman and she's just like, okay, that's fine. Like, it just is not realistic or believable. And there are so many of those moments where you're like, what? That it's hard to take the movie serious, But at the same time of seemingly not to give a shit that her boyfriend has just ditched out, she also kind of wants to track down this girl that he supposedly has absconded with and ends up calling the owner of this cabin, some, random guy that she's never spoken to, because supposedly her boyfriend is the one that like made all of these reservations and things, to see if she can get this woman's info. 'Cause she's like, we rented it. There was another couple that was there at that time who also had rented it. She left a book behind. I want to give it back to her. Like, how do I get in hold of her? Which then just has the cabin owner, who happens to be more Winona's age and pretty attractive, I feel like, ends up coming down and like meeting with her. And instantaneously, Winona Ryder and this cabin owner guy are just like best buds, right? He's going with her on this mission to find out who this woman is, and like he's traveling with her and like searching out where this girl is and getting the address and giving her this address for this woman, and they follow her, and it just is kind of random. Like, there's no point that anyone who just rents out a cabin as a B&B, which you find out later kind of what's going on, but there is no point that anyone who does that as a business is going to be like, yeah, I'll give you that person's address. Yeah, I'll drive with you and like stalk them. Like, when is that ever an acceptable partnership? It's weird. But you can sense sort of the connection between the two of them. And I feel like maybe there is, or you're meant to believe that there is perhaps a little crush between them. And I get it, because it's Dermot Mulroney who plays Nicholas, who is the guy who owns the cabin. And he's good looking, I'm not gonna lie. And he's a pretty good actor. So I get like how in the film, Winona's character would be like, all right, I'm feeling it. But like at the same time, You're stalking the girl that your boyfriend has supposedly left with, but you're sort of falling for the dude whose cabin you kind of all met at. It's a very strange, kind of unique turn of events, if you will. Well, you get some sort of flashbacks throughout this movie of sort of what's going on and what's happening. And it turns out that prior to them going to the cabin, like the night prior, Winona and Max have a party with some of her friends. Her friends are not very nice to Max, which I feel like after a year, like the interaction between them is not incredibly realistic. Like it's almost as if they're meeting him for the first time. But if they dated for a year, they should have been a lot more comfortable with each other, and they're not. It's a very uncomfortable sort of situation. One of her friends makes a comment to him that he does not appreciate. He leaves. And this is where you discover that the couple that they've met in the cabin, he actually met the night before. Max did, Wynona's boyfriend. He went to go get more wine, was his excuse to leave this party with his girlfriend. He goes to like a corner convenience store, and this shady younger couple happens to be there buying, I'm guessing, like snacks and liquor and whatever. They kind of chat randomly, and then they invite him to a bar like across the street to go get drunk with them. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Who does that? Who meets some random shady couple and is like, yes, I will go get wasted with you? Who in their right mind does that? Anyway, so he does. He doesn't come home for hours, right? Winona Ryder is, again, not really very peeved at the fact that her boyfriend has just completely vanished and shown up several hours later without wine, by the by, and drunk off his pants, I would assume at this point. But he then still convinces her to go to this cabin, which the shady couple had told him the night before. They're like, oh, we're playing at this cabin in our band. Like, come out, stay the night, walk with us to this place where we play, and then, we'll have fun. So he convinces Winona to go there. So really all along, her boyfriend has known this shady couple is going to be there. There was never any rental of this cabin. It was all just kind of a lie. And then, twist, shock, gasp, it turns out that really the cabin owner, like as you're watching further in the film, right, the cabin owner, his son is actually this shady, angsty boy that is a part of this couple. So the dad supposedly has some strange disease, and the only way to cure it is some kind of blood transfusion thing. So this is why the younger couple has kidnapped Winona's boyfriend, because he is clean and therefore able to do this blood transfusion that matches the dad. And Winona kind of shows up, discovers that this is all kind of a ruse between them, finds her boyfriend in this, I don't even know what you call those things, like a delivery crate, like one of those big merchandise ones that would have been on a ship. I can't remember what they call those, like a shipping container. That's what it is. So they've locked her boyfriend in this shipping container, which in and of itself is not believable, because if you're locked inside a shipping container, you're going to suffocate to death, if not burn to death in the heat, like it's not like they've put in some fancy air ventilation system. Like, they've just locked him in there. And he's like hooked up to all these tubes and things that is filtering his blood and like making some sort of something for the dad. And then in another zippier twist, turns out the dad is not sick. And instead of using this kid's blood for like transfusions to help him, beat this disease, turns out he just doesn't want to be old. And so he's somehow discovered a way to use younger kids' blood to keep himself young. And Winona's like, cool, let's do that. Like, let's use shady, creepy psychopath girl and make me also stay young. But that doesn't quite work out. I mean, it's a weird, like, do you see kind of what I'm saying with, like, it's unique, and some of the twists make it seem like it would be super lots of fun, but they're just so unbelievable that it really is hard to piece it together. And like, in the end, Winona ends up escaping from them. She's trying to save her boyfriend, who ends up, inevitably kind of pulling out one of these tubes and bleeding, to death. And she is able to escape and lock the rest of these crazies inside this shipping container. And instead of leaving, she just decides like, oh, well, I like this cabin in the woods, so it's just my cabin in the woods now. And the only thing I could think is like, that's not how real life works. Like, you can't just, if someone dies, or if you've now murdered everyone, like you've now murdered 4 people, like you can't just be like, oh, this cabin is mine now. Like, at some point, taxes, you have to pay property taxes. You have to, have electric and all of that. Like, people are going to question how you like suddenly are living in this cabin that belongs to someone else, and that someone else is missing. And like, you can't just be like, oh, you're dead, so my cabin. You know, like it's just I still think it's worth watching because it weasels its way into your brain. Like there are enough, kind of interesting parts. And I actually got really excited when it came to the part in the movie where Winona was like, yeah, I also don't want to get old. Like, give me some of that good young blood. Like that I felt like was super interesting and would have been a twist that I was like, heck yeah, that's a cool way to end that movie. But then they continued it and it almost like took away from how exciting that turn of events would have been and made it sort of more blah, at the end, that like, oh, she somehow manages to get away and like then just takes over this cabin. It was like less somehow than just turns out that they're all kind of crazy, that I feel like would have been more interesting. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about Gone in the Night if you do get the opportunity to watch it. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.